You see, success is great. You can do a lot of things with it, but it's not going to be fulfilling. But when you have a life of significance that's focused on other people, that's focused on the Great Commission, that is focused on bringing the love of Jesus to hurting people around the world, you have a life of significance, and that will be fulfilling. That will be life-changing. It will be life-giving. And I believe one day you will hear when you get to heaven, one day, good job. Good job. That a boy. Well done, my good and faithful servant.
This is Tim Tebow, a philanthropist, preacher, and former NFL quarterback with a massive following across the world. Tebow's widespread influence stems not only from his athletic prowess, but also from his unapologetic public display of faith, inspiring fellow star athletes and millions of fans to openly embrace their faith and live a life of significance. In fact, his decision to wear John 3:16 under his eyes during his playing days saw over 90 million people Google the verse on 2 different occasions, but how exactly did he manage to achieve this feat? And how did he go from being one of the most hated quarterbacks in NFL history to becoming a motivational speaker with global influence? Keep watching to find out. Timothy Richard Tebow was born to an American family in the Philippines on the 14th of August, 1987. The former dual-threat quarterback is renowned for his illustrious achievements in college football and for using his influence to spread the gospel of faith, love, and hope. Growing up under the guidance of religious parents, Tebow learned from an early age to live an exemplary lifestyle, and the 6'3" tall superstar has continued to use his influence to inspire and propagate the faith of millions of people across the world. And that explains why he's regarded as one of the most religious athletes in the world. While Tebow's journey of faith is intentional, evidence suggests that he was destined to walk this path long before birth. After moving with her husband from Florida to the Philippines to start a ministry, Tebow's mother, Pamela Elaine, came down with amoebic dysentery and consequently fell into a coma. It was later discovered during treatment that she was pregnant. Unfortunately, the medication that was supposed to cure amoebic dysentery led to significant complications that caused placenta abruption. Worried that this could end in a stillbirth, the doctors advised Pamela to abort the baby, even though it was illegal in the Philippines. However, with the support of her husband, she decided to keep the baby, and against all odds, Tim Tebow was born a few months later. In 1990, the Tebow family relocated back to Florida, the city where Tim Tebow would begin his football journey. Tebow started his football career as a tight end for the Trinity Christian Academy in Jacksonville. From there, he joined Allen D. Nease High School ahead of the 2003 high school football season. Interestingly, Tebow wasn't registered to these schools as he was homeschooled by his parents. But thanks to the Equal Opportunity for Access in Education Act, which allows homeschoolers to play sports for public schools within their district, he was able to represent them. At Nease, Tebow's exceptional talent and unwavering dedication shone through. His prowess in both running and throwing made him stand out, but like the rest of us, he had his challenges as well. During a game against Pedro Menendez High School on the 14th of November 2003, Tebow took a nasty hit in the first half that injured his right leg. Despite the excruciating pain, Tebow opted to continue playing the game. His team was down 17-0, and he was keen to continue playing and hopefully help his team stage a remarkable comeback. And that's exactly what he did. Not only did he complete the game, he made an incredible 29-yard touchdown that tied the score. After the game, doctors confirmed that Tebow had actually suffered a broken fibula, and this made his performance on the night even more remarkable. This tragic injury ultimately ended Tebow's season, but that didn't stop him from claiming the state record for passing yards as a junior. Growing up, Tebow's faith had always had a strong influence on everything he did, and it was the same with his football career. As a junior, he wore the famous Bible verse Philippians 4:13 under his eyes. You might be wondering why on the eyes. I mean, if he really wanted to make a big statement, he could have had it printed on his shirt or helmet. Well, knowing Tebow's dedication to his faith, he would have done this. but the NFL uniform rule doesn't allow players to wear personal messages on their jerseys. And that's why he chose to wear it under his ease. A divine encounter made him change this verse to John 3:16 ahead of the SEC championship game against Alabama on the 8th of January 2009. And by the end of that game, 94 million people had searched John 3:16 on Google. This showed how much influence his public display of faith was having on the fans. And remarkably, he could find a perfect balance such that his faith advocacy work never affected his performance on the field. In 2007, Tebow won the Heisman Trophy, becoming the first sophomore and homeschooled athlete to achieve that feat. He led the Gators to 2 BCS national championships, winning MVP honors and several personal accolades. Having dominated college football, it was time for Tebow to make the big jump to the NFL. The dream of every young player is to play in the NFL and showcase their talents to the world. But for Tim Tebow, he wasn't going to the NFL to showcase his talent. His faith had become an integral part of his life, and he was keen to use the NFL as a platform to spread the gospel to more people. In the end, he succeeded, but not without a barrage of criticisms from fans, analysts, and even colleagues who weren't comfortable with Tebow's public display of faith. Before we highlight some of these criticisms, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our Christian Celebrities channel to watch more Christian inspiration videos like this one. In 2010, the quarterback was drafted by the Denver Broncos, and he immediately came under fire from NFL purists, especially during the period when he struggled to make the team. Some even labeled him as the worst starting quarterback in NFL history. Yet Tebow remained focused on his game and committed to his faith. With time, he found his rhythm and started to deliver consistent and explosive performances for the Denver Broncos. This resulted in a series of important wins for the team, including some very dramatic late victories. The fourth quarter of the Denver Broncos became known as Tebow time. Every time he made a touchdown, Tebow went down on one knee and said a short prayer. This ritual, called the Tebow bow or Tebowing, soon became a cultural phenomenon among athletes, including famous skier Lindsey Vonn, who adopted it. During this period, Tebow had another incredible game where he made a huge impact on and off the field. It was on the 8th of January 2012, exactly 3 years after his SEC championship game against Alabama, that convinced 94 million people to Google. John 3:16, Tim Tebow played against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. Tim Tebow played a significant role as the Denver Broncos won 29-23. At the end of the game, the stats showed that Tebow had a possession time of 31.06. His yards for completion was 31.6, and his yards per rush were 3.16. In addition, he threw 316 yards, and his overall performance was rated 31.6 on the night. If you've been following, you'll notice that all of these stats contain the numbers 3, 1, and 6. Coincidentally, the quarterback had John 3:16 inked under his eyes, and over 90 million people Googled the Bible verse during the game. It was a phenomenal occurrence that proved that Tebow's performance in the game was beyond ordinary. But the quarterback was humble enough not to take credit for it.
I didn't think of John 3:16 one time, so I can't take credit for it. I had nothing to do with it. I just went out there and tried to do anything I could to try to win a playoff game, and we were blessed to win this crazy game in overtime.
Beyond wearing Bible verses under his eyes, Tebow also made it a habit to always thank God in his post-game interviews. And this caused a lot of buzz for both good and bad reasons. While many fans and analysts hailed him for inspiring other star athletes to embrace and display their faith publicly, some others felt he overdid it. During an interview, Jake Plummer, a former Denver Broncos quarterback, praised Tebow's on-field successes, but also criticized him for his constant public display of faith. "Regardless of whether I wish he'd just shut up after a game and go hug his teammates, I think he's a winner," Plummer said. "I think that when he accepts the fact that we know that he loves Jesus Christ, then I think I'll like him a little better." This comment by Plummer was quite controversial and perhaps uncalled for, but it certainly didn't generate as much controversy as what Stephen Tulloch and Tony Scheffler did during Detroit's 45-10 win over the Denver Broncos. During the first half, Tulloch sacked Tebow and celebrated the clash by doing the Tebow bow. Scheffler joined the mockery party, hitting the Tebow celebration after he caught a touchdown pass. When a journalist asked for Tebow's response to these disrespectful gestures, the quarterback said he hadn't seen the footage, adding that he wasn't bothered by their actions. Tebow's restrained response to this incident is admirable, to say the least. No doubt, what Tulloch and Scheffler did was disgraceful and provocative. As a matter of fact, he'd have been well within his right to lash out at them. But, in accordance with the doctrines of his faith, Tebow chose the path of restraint. In a world where people are keen to reward evil with evil, Tebow showed that he was a different breed, and in the end, this act of meekness, coupled with his brilliant performances for the Denver Broncos, helped to change the minds of his critics towards him. Speaking during a show on ESPN, former NFL running back Merrill Hoge admitted that he had been wrong about Tebow on all levels, but he was now a huge fan of the quarterback. Famous ESPN analyst Stephen A. Smith, who had publicly criticized Tebow, also ate the humble pie. "Something about this kid makes special things happen," Stephen A. said. "I sit before you here today a very humble man. I am officially humbled. It's as if he's been touched by a force that says bad things happen to those who go against him." The boy has clearly been touched. And since then, Stephen A.'s perspective about Tebow seemed to have changed completely. In another interview, the sports analyst admitted that he has a lot of love for Tebow.
And he's the real deal in terms of his kindness, the kind of man, the kind of person that he is. It's not an act. He truly is that person. He's that guy. And I got a lot of love for him. And I just wish him nothing but the best.
For Tebow, this sudden show of love from his critics must have come as a surprise. Nevertheless, he never held it against them. Instead, he remained dedicated to his faith and the ultimate goal of living a life of purpose.
I wanted to make conscious choices and decisions to start living that every single day. When my alarm went off, I was going to wake up knowing that this day was on purpose, to live out my dream, to live out my passion, and more than anything, to live out my purpose.
Some people argue that Tebow could perhaps have had a longer NFL career if he wasn't so obsessed with his faith. But the former Broncos quarterback doesn't agree. "I would just say what Jesus has done for me is everything," Tebow explained. "So my faith hasn't really cost me anything. My faith in Jesus and what Jesus has done for me has given me everything. It's given me a real hope. It's given me a meaning. It's given me a purpose for being. It's given me a hope of heaven. It's given me a joy for life. It's given me a love for people, even in the midst of my mistakes and shortcomings and failures in life. I'm not defined by my scars." Looking back at his career and the life he's lived so far, we can all agree that Tebow is the perfect example of how humans can embrace their faith, even as public figures. Of course, it's a difficult path to walk, especially when you decide to do it wholeheartedly like Tebow did. But when you see the kind of positive influence it has on society, you'll agree that this perhaps is a model we should all adopt, irrespective of our religious affiliations.